The alarm screamed through the research station, jerking from his microscope. He looked up, his eyes tired from hours of studying cell samples. The red lights flashed across the laboratory walls, painting everything in an urgent glow. "Unknown vessel approaching," the computer voice announced, requesting emergency docking. Pushed his chair back and ran toward the main control room. His heart pounded in his chest. In 3 years working at Horizon's Edge, they had never received an emergency call from anyone, let alone an alien ship. When he burst through the doors, was already there. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel, her face tight with concentration. "What is it?" asked, breathing hard. "Ship," said without looking away from her screen. "They're not supposed to be in this sector." Felt his stomach drop. Everyone knew about the Empire. They were powerful, ancient, and they looked down on humans as primitive newcomers to space. They had technology that made human inventions look like children's toys. "Why would they come here?" whispered. The docking bay doors opened with a heavy clang, and rushed down the corridor, their boots echoing on the metal floor. When they reached the bay, the ship was already inside. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, its hull shimmering like liquid silver. The ship's door opened. A tall figure stepped out, carrying something wrapped in flowing cloth. The alien moved with desperate speed. "I need help," the creature said in perfect but accented English. "Please, you must help her." Stared at the being before him. Ambassador, as he would later introduce himself, stood nearly 7 feet tall. His skin was pale blue, almost white, and his eyes were large and golden. But what caught attention was the bundle in his arms. "What happened?" asked, her medical training taking over. Gently laid the bundle on the floor. He pulled back the cloth, revealing a young woman. She was clearly with the same pale blue skin and delicate features, but her skin had dark red marks spreading across it like cracks in glass. Her breathing was shallow and painful to watch. "This is Princess Lyra," said, his voice breaking. "She is dying from crimson decay. Our medicine cannot save her. Nothing can save her." He looked at with desperate eyes. "But we heard stories. Stories that humans sometimes find solutions where we cannot, that you try impossible things." Knelt beside the princess. Even sick and dying, he could see she was young, maybe in her early 20s in human years. The red marks on her skin seemed to pulse with an inner darkness. Not a doctor," said carefully. "I study alien life, but I've never treated a before." "Please," begged. "She has 48 hours at most. Our empire's greatest physicians have failed. You are our last hope." Caught's eye and shook her head slightly. The message was clear. This was dangerous. If the princess died in their care, the empire might blame them, might blame all of humanity. But looked at the dying girl again. She couldn't have been much younger than his own sister back on Earth. "Get her to the medical bay," he said. "I'll do what I can." The next hours passed in a blur. Set up scanners around the princess while monitored her vital signs. Stood in the corner like a statue, watching everything with those golden eyes. The princess's biology was fascinating and terrifying. Had studied alien species before, but never this closely, never with someone's life depending on his understanding. "The disease is attacking her cells at the genetic level," explained too. "It's like her own DNA is unraveling." "Can you stop it?" asked quietly. "I don't know," admitted. "Medicine is centuries ahead of ours. If they couldn't fix this, what chance do I have?" But as studied the scans, something nagged at his mind. The pattern of cellular breakdown looked familiar somehow. He had seen something like this before, years ago, during his research on Earth. "Pull up my old files," told. "The neural decay study from 2243. His eyes widened. "You think there's a connection?" "Maybe," said. "Human neural decay and this crimson decay, they're different diseases, different species, but the way the cells die." He pointed at the screen. "Look at the pattern, it's similar." Through the night worked. He barely noticed when Sung, the station commander, arrived. The older man stood beside, both of them watching like judges at a trial. "Do you understand what you're risking?" Sung asked quietly. "If she dies, they might hold us responsible." "She's already dying," said without looking up from his work. "What's the difference?" "The difference is that she wouldn't die in human hands," Sung replied. But wasn't listening anymore. He had found something. In his old research, he had developed an experimental serum to treat human neural decay. It had never been tested on humans, let alone aliens, but the theoretical framework was sound. The princess groaned softly, her body trembling. The red marks had spread further across her skin. "How long does she have?" asked. "Check the monitors. Based on the progression rate, maybe 36 hours now." Closed his eyes. 36 hours to adapt a human treatment for an alien biology. 36 hours to do what an entire empire's worth of doctors couldn't do. He opened his eyes and looked at. "I need complete access to her genetic data, everything you have about Crimson Decay, and I need you to trust me." Nodded slowly. "If you can save her, human, my people will owe you a debt beyond measure." He paused. "But know this, she is not just any, she is the heir to our throne. If she dies, Empress will want justice." "Understood," said. As transferred files to his computer, the princess's eyes fluttered open for just a moment. They were silver, like stars, and they looked directly at before closing again. In that brief moment made his choice. He would try the impossible. He would adapt human science to save an alien life. Because that's what humans did. They tried when others said it couldn't be done. Hadn't slept in 28 hours. His eyes burned, and his hands shook as he poured another cup of coffee. The medical bay had become his entire world, filled with screens showing endless streams of data about biology. Arrived early that morning, her young face full of concern. She was only 23, fresh from the academy, but she had a brilliant mind for biochemistry. "Doctor," she said softly, "you need to rest." "Can't," muttered, not looking away from his work. "She has less than 30 hours now." Set down a food tray beside him. "Then at least eat something. You're no good to her if you collapse." Grabbed a sandwich without really tasting it. His mind was racing through possibilities, each one more difficult than the last. The genetic structure was incredibly complex, far more sophisticated than human DNA. And Crimson Decay attacked it in ways that seemed almost intelligent, like the disease knew exactly where to strike. Run another simulation, told. Take the base serum compound and increase the regeneration markers by 15%. His fingers flew across her keyboard. Moments later, she shook her head. Failed. The cells reject it within minutes. Slammed his hand on the desk. There has to be a way. In the corner, 3 doctors had set up their own equipment. They wore long white robes and carried themselves with an air of superiority. Bo, their leader, watched with barely hidden contempt. "This is foolish," Bo said in his deep, melodic voice. "Human medicine is primitive. You play with chemicals like children mixing mud." Ignored him but stepped forward. "Then why are you here? If your medicine is so advanced, why is she dying?" Bo's face darkened, but he had no answer. The truth hung in the air between them. The mighty empire, with all its knowledge and power, had failed their princess. Sung entered the medical bay, his commander's uniform pressed and perfect despite the crisis. He pulled aside, speaking quietly. "I just received a message from Earth Command," Sung said. "They're concerned. The Empire is watching this closely, if the princess dies here." "She won't," said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. "Listen to me," Sung gripped his shoulder. "I served in the border wars. I've seen what happens when powerful species decide to punish weaker ones. If this goes wrong, it won't just be you who pays. It could mean trouble for all of humanity." Pulled away. "What do you want me to do? Give up? Let her die?" "I want you to be realistic about what you can achieve in 30 hours. but had already turned back to his work. Realistic didn't save lives. Realistic didn't cure diseases. Sometimes you had to attempt the impossible. Hours passed and ran hundreds of simulations. Each one failed in different ways. The human-based serum would either be rejected by cells, or it would work for a few minutes before the crimson decay adapted and destroyed it. It's like fighting a smart enemy, observed. The disease changes its approach every time we try something new. Rubbed his tired eyes. Then we need to be smarter. We need to create something the disease can't adapt to. He pulled up his original research again, the work he'd done 4 years ago on neural decay. Back then, he'd been trying to help his own sister, who had suffered from a rare genetic disorder. He'd failed to save her, but the research had been sound. The theory was solid. "What if we're approaching this wrong?" said suddenly. "We've been trying to adapt a human solution to a problem, but what if we combine them instead?" Looked confused. Combine them how? "Look at this," pointed at his screen. "Human stem cells are remarkably flexible. They can become almost anything. Cells are more specialized but also more stable. What if we use human regeneration technology to guide genetic repair?" "That's never been done before," said. "Nothing about this has been done before," replied. He began working with renewed energy. The idea was crazy, maybe even impossible. He would take human stem cell markers and combine them with synthesized genetic material. The human components would provide the flexibility to fight the disease, while the elements would ensure the patient's body accepted the treatment. Bo approached, watching over his shoulder. "This will never work. You're mixing incompatible biologies." "Maybe," said, "but I'd rather try and fail than stand here and watch her die." By the 20th hour, had a prototype. It existed only in simulation, but the results looked promising. The hybrid serum could potentially trick the crimson decay, approaching the damaged cells from multiple angles at once. "Run a full compatibility test," ordered. They waited in tense silence. The simulation took 30 minutes to complete. When the results appeared, gasped. "It works," she whispered. "Doctor, it actually works, in the simulation at least." But pointed at another readout. "The princess's condition is getting worse. Her vital signs are dropping faster now." Looked at the clock. 6 hours remained. 6 hours to turn a successful simulation into a real treatment. "We need to synthesize the serum," said. "Now." The next hours were a blur of precise chemical mixing and constant monitoring. Hands were steady despite his exhaustion. He had done this kind of work thousands of times, but never with stakes this high. Bo and the other doctors argued among themselves in their musical language. Finally, Bo approached. "If you give her this experimental mixture and she dies, it will be considered murder," Bo said coldly. "The Empress will demand your execution." Didn't look up from his work. "And if I do nothing and she dies, what then?" "Then it is simply fate, the natural course of her illness." "That's not good enough for me," said. At hour 36, the serum was ready. It sat in a small vial, glowing slightly with a soft blue light. Held it up to examine it, this tiny container that held either hope or disaster. The princess lay on the medical bed, her breathing barely visible. The red marks had spread across nearly all her skin now. According to monitors, her organs were beginning to fail. Stood beside her, one hand on his weapon, the other gripping the bed rail so hard it bent slightly. "Is it ready?" he asked. Looked at the serum, then at the dying princess, then at all the faces watching him, worried but supportive, hopeful and scared. Sung, concerned about the consequences. Bo, waiting for him to fail, desperate for any chance to save his princess. "Yes," said quietly, "it's ready." "And you believe it will work?" demanded. Was silent for a moment. He thought about his sister, about all the times he'd failed before, about the weight of this moment. "I believe it's her only chance," he finally answered. stared at him for a long moment, those golden eyes searching his face for something. Then he stepped back. "Then do it," said. "Save her or die trying." His hand didn't shake as he prepared the injection. Everything around him seemed to slow down, the chaos of the medical bay fading into a strange calm. He could hear his own heartbeat, steady and strong. "Wait," Bo stepped forward, his voice sharp. "This is madness. You cannot inject an unknown substance into the air to our throne." "She's dying anyway," said firmly. "What difference does it make?" "The difference," Bo said coldly, "is that natural death is tragedy, but killing her with untested human experiments is murder." Raised one hand, silencing everyone. "Enough. The decision is mine to make, and I have made it. Proceed, human doctor." Approached the princess's bedside. Up close, he could see how young she really was. The red marks of crimson decay had turned her beautiful blue skin into a map of pain and death. Her breathing was so shallow that her chest barely moved. He inserted the needle carefully into her arm. The doctors muttered protests in their own language, but kept them back with just a look. "This might hurt," whispered, though he wasn't sure she could hear him, "but please hold on." He pressed the plunger slowly, watching the glowing blue serum disappear into her veins. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the princess's body went rigid, her back arching off the bed. "What's happening?" demanded, his hand moving to his weapon. "Her body is reacting to the treatment," said, checking the monitors frantically. "It's fighting the foreign elements." "Is that normal?" Sung asked. "I don't know," admitted. "This has never been done before." The princess's vital signs jumped wildly on the screens. Her heart rate spiked, then dropped, then spiked again. The red marks on her skin seemed to pulse and darken. "You're killing her," Bo shouted. "Stop this now." But there was no stopping it. The serum was in her bloodstream now, spreading through her entire body. They could only watch and wait. Stood by her bedside, his fists clenched. He had gambled everything on this moment. His career, his life, maybe even the safety of his entire species. And for what? A theory, a desperate hope. Minutes crawled by like hours. The princess continued to shake and convulse. Alarms blared from the medical equipment. Worked frantically to stabilize her, but the numbers kept dropping. "Heart rate falling," called out. "Blood pressure critical." Felt the world closing in around him. It wasn't working. He had failed again, just like he'd failed his sister. The great human doctor who thought he could outsmart an alien disease that had stumped an entire empire. Then suddenly something changed. The alarm stopped. The princess's body relaxed. Her breathing, which had been so labored before, came easier now. "Wait," said, staring at her screen. "Look at this." On the monitor, something incredible was happening. The red marks on the princess's skin were fading, just slightly. The cellular readings showed the crimson decay retreating. "It's working," whispered. "It's actually working." But didn't celebrate, not yet. He had seen false hope before. He watched the monitors carefully, looking for any sign that the improvement was temporary. An hour passed. The princess's vital signs continued to improve. The red marks faded more and more, her skin returning to its natural pale blue color. Her breathing became deep and regular. 2 hours. The crimson decay was in full retreat now. Whatever the hybrid serum was doing, it was working better than had dared to hope. The disease that had been killing the princess for months was disappearing in a matter of hours. Bo and the other doctors stood in shocked silence. They ran their own scans, checking and rechecking the results as if they couldn't believe what they were seeing. "Impossible," Bo muttered. "This is impossible." "And yet it's happening," said with a tired smile. At the 12-hour mark, the princess's eyes opened. They were silver and bright, no longer clouded with pain. She looked around the medical bay in confusion, taking in the strange equipment and unfamiliar faces. Her gaze settled on who stood closest to her bed. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice weak but clear. Felt a wave of relief so powerful it made his knees weak. I'm a doctor. You've been very sick." "I remember," she said slowly. "I remember the pain, the darkness." She looked down at her arms where the red marks were almost completely gone. "What did you do to me?" "I gave you medicine," said simply. "A treatment we developed here." The princess tried to sit up but rushed to her side. "Your Highness, please rest. You've been through a terrible ordeal." "I feel better," she said, wonder in her voice. "For the first time in months I don't feel the decay eating me from inside." She looked at with those silver eyes. "You saved my life." "We're not finished yet," cautioned. "You'll need more treatments to make sure the disease doesn't come back. But yes, I think you're going to be okay." Tears ran down his face, something hadn't thought possible for the stoic warrior. "Thank you," said, his voice breaking. "Thank you, human." But Bo wasn't celebrating. He stepped forward, his face dark with anger and humiliation. "This is a violation of natural law," he declared. "You've used forbidden biotechnology, mixing human and genetic material. This is an abomination." "This abomination saved her life," shot back. "Today perhaps," Bo said. "But what are the long-term effects? What have you done to her genes, to her bloodline?" He looked at the princess. "Your Highness, this human has experimented on you like a laboratory animal." "This human," the princess said, her voice gaining strength, "did what you could not, what an entire empire of doctors could not." She looked at Bo with royal authority despite her weakness. "He gave me life when you gave me only platitudes and false hope." Bo's face flushed with shame and rage. "The High Council will hear of this. They will demand answers about how a primitive human achieved what we could not." "Let them demand," the princess said, "and let them hear that sometimes the answer to an impossible problem comes from those we least expect." Over the next days, the princess's recovery continued, monitored her carefully, adjusting the treatment as needed. The crimson decay was completely gone within 48 hours, destroyed by the hybrid serum. News of the miracle spread quickly. Within a week, messages arrived from the High Council wanted details. The Empress wanted answers, and everyone wanted to know how a human had achieved the impossible. Sung pulled aside one evening. "You did it," he said. "You actually did it, but now comes the hard part." "What do you mean?" asked. "The Empire is proud," Sung explained. "You've embarrassed their entire medical establishment. They'll want to study your work to understand it, and some of them won't be happy about owing humans a debt." The princess overhead them. She was walking now, getting stronger every day. "Commander Sung is correct," she said. "My mother Empress has summoned you to both to honor you and to question you." "Is that safe?" asked. The princess smiled. "Safer than letting me die would have been. My mother is grateful, but she's also concerned. What you've done, Doctor, has changed the balance of things. Humans were supposed to be the newcomers, the primitives who needed our guidance." She looked at him seriously. "You've proven that wrong, and not everyone in my empire will be pleased about that." Understood. He had saved a life, but he had also created complications. Political complications that could affect Earth's relationship with one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. "Will you come?" the princess asked. "Will you face my people and show them what humanity is capable of?" Thought about refusing. It would be safer to stay here, to let the politicians handle things. But he looked at the princess, alive and healthy because he had dared to try. "I'll come," he said. The princess smiled. "Good, because this is only the beginning, Doctor. You've started something that will change the galaxy." The ship carrying them to Prime was unlike anything had ever seen. It was massive, built from materials that seemed to shift colors in the light. Inside, the walls glowed softly, and the air smelled of something sweet and alien. Stood at the observation window, watching stars streak past as they traveled faster than light. Beside him, studied a data pad containing information about culture and customs. Did you know they have 17 different types of formal bows, said, and we're expected to learn all of them before we arrive. Great, muttered. He was a scientist, not a diplomat. Give him a disease to cure, a problem to solve, but formal ceremonies made him nervous. Jin, the pilot assigned to escort them, laughed. He was younger than most had met, with bright golden eyes and an easy smile. Don't worry too much, Jin said. The princess has already told the court that humans have different customs. They won't expect perfection. He grinned. Just don't accidentally challenge anyone to a blood duel and you should be fine. That's a thing, asked alarmed. It was a joke, Jin assured her, though his smile suggested it might not have been entirely a joke. Princess Lyra entered the observation deck. She moved with grace now, showing no signs of the illness that had nearly killed her. She wore flowing robes of deep blue, marked with silver symbols that couldn't read. We'll arrive at Prime in 2 days, she announced. I thought you might want to know what to expect. She gestured, and a hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed a planet that made Earth look small and plain. Prime was huge, with 3 moons orbiting it. The surface glowed with the lights of billions of inhabitants. It's beautiful, whispered. It's home, Lyra said with obvious pride. The capital of an empire that spans 200 worlds, she looked at. And you, a human from a species that has barely left its own solar system, will stand before our highest court. No pressure, said dryly. Over the next days, Lyra spent time with them, teaching them about her world. But more often, she wanted to learn about theirs. Tell me about Earth, she said one evening as they sat in the ship's common area. What is it like to come from a world that's still, young? Thought about how to answer. It's crowded, loud. We have problems, pollution, wars, disease. We don't have the technology to solve everything. And yet you solved my problem, Lyra said softly. That was different, said. I got lucky. No, Lyra shook her head. It wasn't luck. I've read your research files. You took concepts that shouldn't work together and made them work. You improvised. You adapted. Those are human traits, aren't they? I suppose so, admitted. When you don't have perfect technology, you learn to make do with what you have. We don't think that way, Lyra said. We plan, we calculate, we follow proven methods. She looked away. Maybe that's why we couldn't cure Crimson Decay. We were so certain our way was the only way. Join the conversation. How many others have died from this disease? Lyra's face grew sad. Hundreds in my family line alone. It's hereditary, passed from parent to child. My grandmother died from it, my aunt, 3 of my cousins. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I was supposed to be next. Everyone knew it. They were just waiting for the decay to take me like it took all the others. But it didn't, said firmly. You're here, you're alive. Because a human doctor decided that impossible just meant nobody had succeeded yet, Lyra said. That's not how my people think. We accept limits. We acknowledge when something cannot be done, she smiled. Humans apparently don't. Jin approached, interrupting their conversation. Your Highness, we're receiving a transmission from Prime. It's marked urgent. Lyra's expression became more guarded. Put it through. A hologram appeared, showing an older woman. She wore elaborate robes covered in jewels, and her presence radiated authority. Even through the hologram, could feel the weight of her gaze. Mother, Lyra said, bowing slightly. Daughter, Empress replied. Her voice was cold and formal. I see you're well. The reports of your recovery were true. Yes, Mother, thanks to Doctor and his colleagues. The Empress's eyes shifted too. He felt like a specimen under a microscope. The human doctor, the one who achieved what our greatest minds could not. Wasn't sure if that was praise or accusation. I only did what I could, Your Majesty. And what you could, the Empress said slowly, has created quite a situation. Do you know what it means when a primitive species saves a royal? I didn't think about politics, said honestly. I just wanted to help. How refreshingly simple, the Empress said, though her tone suggested she didn't find it refreshing at all. Nevertheless, you will be honored when you arrive. A ceremony has been arranged. The whole empire will see the human who saved my daughter. After the transmission ended, turned to Lyra. Your mother doesn't seem very happy about this. She's grateful I'm alive, Lyra said carefully. But she's also the leader of an empire built on the idea of superiority, having a human solve our greatest medical mystery. She trailed off. Complicates things, finished. Yes, Lyra agreed. There are factions in our government who believe humans should remain subordinate, client species who follow our lead. Your success threatens that worldview. I didn't mean to threaten anyone, said. I just saved a life. I know, Lyra said gently. But in politics, intent matters less than result. And the result is that you've proven humans are more capable than many of my people want to admit. The final day of the journey arrived. Stood at the observation window as Prime grew larger. The planet was stunning, its cities visible even from space as webs of light spanning continents. Nervous, asked joining him. Terrified, admitted. What if they decide I'm a threat? What if they think I stole medical secrets or something? Then we deal with it, said firmly. Together. Lyra approached them one last time before landing. When we arrive, there will be celebrations, public ceremonies. My mother will grant you honors and titles. She hesitated. But there will also be challenges. Some among my people will test you, try to prove that your success was a fluke. I'm not interested in proving anything, said. I know, Lyra said, but they are, particularly Lord. He's a high noble, a traditionalist. He believes strongly in supremacy. She looked worried. Be careful around him. He sees you as a danger to our empire's natural order. The ship began its descent. Through the window, could see the capital city growing closer. It was enormous, with buildings that spiraled into the sky and parks that looked like green jewels from above. Last chance to turn back, Jin joked as he prepared the landing sequence. Took a deep breath. He thought about his sister, about all the people who had died because diseases couldn't be cured. He thought about the princess, nearly dead in his medical bay and now alive and healthy. No, he said quietly, no turning back. Whatever happens, I made the right choice. Squeezed his hand. We'll face it together. The ship touched down on a landing platform surrounded by thousands of. They were all watching, all waiting to see the humans who had achieved the impossible. As the door opened, Lyra turned to one last time. Thank you, she said, not just for saving my life but for showing my people that we still have things to learn, even from species we considered beneath us. Ready? Asked. Straightened his shoulders and walked toward the door. Outside, an entire empire waited to judge him, but he had faced worse odds before. He had faced a dying princess and refused to give up. He could handle this. The throne room of Prime was designed to make visitors feel small. It stretched upward for hundreds of feet, with columns carved from single pieces of crystal. Light poured through stained glass windows that told stories of conquest spanning thousands of years. Walked down the long aisle toward the throne, very aware of the thousands of eyes watching him. Nobles stood on both sides, dressed in robes that made Earth's finest clothing look like rags. Their faces showed a mix of curiosity, admiration, and in some cases, barely hidden contempt. Empress sat on a throne that seemed to be made of liquid silver. Beside her stood Princess Lyra, now dressed in full royal regalia. She gave a small, encouraging smile, and stopped at the base of the throne and bowed, just as Lyra had taught them. Doctor of Earth, the Empress said, her voice carrying through the vast room. You stand before the High Court, summoned to receive our gratitude and our judgment. I'm honored, Your Majesty, said, hoping he was using the right form of address. You saved my daughter's life when our greatest physicians could not, the Empress continued. For this, we owe you a debt beyond measure. Name your reward, and if it is within our power, it shall be granted. Had thought about this moment during the journey. Wealth, technology, a position of power, but standing there looking at the people around him, he knew what mattered. I want nothing for myself, Your Majesty, said, but I would ask that the treatment I develop be shared freely with anyone who needs it, not just but all species who might benefit. A murmur ran through the crowd. The Empress raised one hand for silence. A noble request, she said. It shall be granted, she gestured, and servants brought forward a chest filled with crystalline objects that glowed with inner light. Nevertheless, accept these gifts as tokens of our appreciation. Before could respond, a voice rang out from the crowd. I object. A tall stepped forward. He was older, with silver markings on his robes that indicated high rank. His face was stern and disapproving. Lord, the Empress said coolly, you interrupt a royal ceremony. Forgive me, Your Majesty, said, though his tone suggested he wasn't sorry at all. But before we celebrate this human too greatly, should we not verify his claims? Perhaps his success was mere luck. Perhaps the princess would have recovered on her own. Lyra stepped forward angrily. I was dying, Lord, you saw the reports yourself. Reports can be interpreted many ways, said smoothly. He turned to address the crowd. I mean no disrespect to Doctor, but consider humans are a young species, barely space-faring. Their medicine is centuries behind ours. Is it not more likely that their cure was simply good timing? That the princess's own body finally fought off the disease? Felt anger rising in his chest but touched his arm in warning. This was a trap, wanted him to react emotionally. Lord, said carefully, I have all my research data available. Any of your doctors can review it and see exactly how the treatment works. Data can be fabricated, said dismissively. I propose a true test, a demonstration of your abilities. The Empress leaned forward, interested. What kind of demonstration? Gestured and guards brought forward a small figure. It was a child, no more than 8 years old by guess. She was pale and weak, struggling to walk even with support. This is Myra, said. She suffers from neural cascade syndrome, another disease that has no cure. Our finest doctors have tried everything. He looked at with a cold smile. If you are truly the miracle worker everyone claims, cure her. You have 24 hours. Stared at the child, his mind racing. This was different from treating Lyra. He knew nothing about neural cascade syndrome. He had no research, no baseline to work from. This is unfair, protested. He can't possibly. If he's as brilliant as claimed, interrupted, it should be simple. After all, he cured Crimson Decay in just 2 days with no knowledge of biology. He spread his hands. Surely he can do it again. Looked at the child. She met his eyes, and he saw the same fear and hope he'd seen in Lyra's eyes. Behind her stood her parents, desperate and terrified. Whispered, you don't have to do this, it's a setup. I know, whispered back, but look at her. He stepped forward. I'll try, but I need full access to your medical databases and a laboratory. Granted, the Empress said immediately. Smile widened. He thought he'd won. He thought would fail and be exposed as a fraud. The next hours were a blur, and worked in a laboratory provided by the palace. Neural cascade syndrome was brutal. It caused the brain's neural pathways to collapse, leading to paralysis and eventually death. This is impossible, said, staring at the scans. We don't have time to understand this disease, let alone cure it. We don't need to understand everything, said. We just need to understand enough. He pulled up everything he could find about neural cascade syndrome. Then he looked at his treatment for Crimson Decay. Then he examined dozens of other human medical breakthroughs. What are you thinking? Asked. I'm thinking about what makes human medicine different, said. Called us primitive. And in a way, he's right. Medicine is sophisticated, precise, based on complete understanding. And that's bad? Asked. Not bad, said, but limited. Look at their approach to neural cascade syndrome. They tried to fix it by understanding exactly how every neural pathway works, then repairing them one by one. That makes sense, said. But it doesn't work, pointed out, because there are too many pathways and they collapse faster than they can be repaired. It's the wrong approach. So what's the right approach? Asked. Smiled. We don't fix the pathways. We give the brain the tools to fix itself. He began working with new energy. Instead of trying to understand the entire disease, he focused on creating an environment where the brain could heal naturally. He adapted his previous serum, adding components that would stimulate neural growth and protect healthy pathways while the damaged ones regenerated. It was improvisation on a massive scale, taking human techniques, technology, and pure guesswork and combining them into something new. When Lord arrived to check on their progress, he found holding a vial of purple liquid. "Is that your cure?" asked skeptically. "It's a treatment," corrected. "I don't know if it will cure her, but it should help." Should laughed. How very scientific. Met his eyes. Sometimes should is all you have. Sometimes you have to try even when you're not certain. He administered the treatment to young Myra while her parents watched anxiously. Unlike with Lyra, the results weren't immediate. Hours passed with no change. Stood nearby, his arms crossed. 24 hours, doctor. The time is almost up. But wasn't watching the clock. He was watching Myra's neural scans. And slowly, very slowly, something was happening. The collapsed pathways weren't being repaired exactly. Instead, new pathways were forming around them. The brain was adapting, creating new routes for signals to travel. "Look," whispered, pointing at the scan. By hour 20, Myra's fingers twitched. By hour 22, she opened her eyes. And at hour 23, she spoke her first word in weeks. "Mama," she whispered. Her mother burst into tears. Her father gripped his hand so hard it hurt. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you, human." Stood frozen, staring at the scans in disbelief. How did you do this?" "I stopped trying to fight the disease on its own terms," explained. "Medicine tried to fix everything perfectly. I just gave her body the chance to fix itself imperfectly. And sometimes, imperfect solutions are good enough." The ceremony that followed was grander than the first. The Empress publicly declared that Earth would be granted protected status and access to trade routes. More importantly, she proposed a medical alliance, human doctors working alongside physicians, combining their different approaches. Princess Lyra stood beside as he addressed the court. "What Doctor has shown us," she said, "is that advancement isn't about perfection. It's about adaptation, about being willing to try new things even when they seem impossible." Approached afterward, his pride clearly wounded. "You embarrassed me," he said quietly. "You embarrassed our entire medical establishment." "That wasn't my goal," said. "I just wanted to help that child." "I know," said, "which somehow makes it worse." He paused. "But also instructive. Perhaps we have become too rigid in our thinking." 6 months later, stood on Horizon's edge again, back in his familiar laboratory. But things were different now. On his team were 3 doctors, including Bo, who had grudgingly admitted that human approaches had merit. A ship approached the station and smiled. He knew who it was. Princess Lyra entered his lab, looking healthy and vibrant. Behind her came a team of both human and medical personnel. "Ready to work?" she asked with a smile. "Always," replied. "Good," Lyra said, "because we have 17 new diseases that need curing. And I told the High Council that if anyone can find solutions, it's a team that combines precision with human improvisation." Looked at his team, humans and working together. Different species, different approaches, but united in one goal, to save lives. "Let's get started," he said. because that's what humans did. They adapted, they improvised, and they never ever gave up trying to do the impossible.